Fork, Montana's over there. Mark WILTSE, and it's all yours. He's going to tell us about the impact on local businesses from the what was a $14 million project, I believe, became a $20 million project in fixing the city landfill.
Yeah, only on the negative B side.
Can everybody hear him okay? Do you need
Good morning, everybody.
a faulty mic here?
My name is Mark WILTSE, and I apologize for my voice. I have been struggling with a virus for the last couple of weeks, and I'm just getting over it. So I think I've got the voice to continue through this. But if anybody can't hear me, just sing out. I think I can project. Let me open up things here with where's my mouse? I guess the other way. Let me open up things here with the picture that you saw up there a moment ago is titled it's a C.M. Russell painting, and the title of that is "In Without Knocking." That's a bunch of cowboys that are in town for a celebration. And oftentimes that's the way I feel coming into the community. Sometimes we come in without knocking, and sometimes it's disruptive to the communities and the areas that we work in. But let me take a second here and get this on the right screen, and I can do that this way.
Let's go back to the should be so easy. I have to get out of the computer and fix up and get the virus. It goes crazy.
Should have done this while you guys are talking. All right, so this presentation is about the Port Angeles Landfill stabilization project. The project was put out on the street in 2013 and bid and awarded. There were several. It was a competitive bid contract, and it was bid and won by my company, Magnus Corporation. Why does it say Great Lakes on there? In November of 2014, we were purchased by Great Lakes Dock and Dredge, a company out of Chicago, Illinois, just outside Oak Brook, Illinois, actually. And our name changed to Great Lakes Environmental first of this last month. So we were known as Magnus Pacific when we purchased when we won the project, and when we were purchased by Great Lakes Environmental. So if we go through here, you'll see slides that are Great Lakes, but just as recently as the last 3 weeks, we've always been known as Magnus Pacific, and now we're known as Great Lakes Environmental. So a little bit of history about myself. As John said, I live in Big Fork, Montana. I've been doing environmental remediation projects across the United States for almost 30 years, and I've had the opportunity to visit some really wonderful places. But I have to be honest with you, the first time somebody said, we need your help in Port Angeles, Washington, I said, where the heck is that? And have never been here before, never been on the Olympic Peninsula. And so my first day on the job here was last June 2015. The project had already been going through 2014, and in 2015, we had a change in management, we had a change in our supervisory staff here, and they asked me to come through and manage some of the business aspects that were not being managed properly. So that's how I ended up in Port Angeles, And my expertise is, I'm a businessman, and I run the business side of our company. My title is a program manager, and I function at a level with, you know, the clients. I interact with the clients, whether that's the Department of Energy, large oil companies, large mining companies, as we do cleanups across the United States. I currently have projects scattered in 4 different states, from Chicago to nothing in Alaska, but that's coming up. This was one of those projects that I oversee. In 2015, summer of 2015, I was brought into this project and had to get up to speed. And I had to get up to speed pretty quickly about what was happening here. And I needed to understand what was driving the project. And this is from, this quote is from the State Biennium 2012-2015 budget request. A financial assistance request through that the city put together, developed by Herrera Consulting, a company that I work with throughout the United States. This describes what was happening up at the Port Angeles landfill. For those of you you guys are all from here, you know what it looked like. There was a cell as you drove in. There was a cell on your right that was on the bluff. It was calving off, failing catastrophically in some cases. And this was the drivers to get that was to this bluff was retreating and waste was falling into the strait. This is an old picture taken from that very same report. This is 2004. This is a partial cell failure of cell 304, which is the cell as you drive into the landfills on your right-hand side. And so this is what you all were dealing with when the city went forward with the project, and with some help from the Department of Ecology, secured the funds to be able to do this. It was estimated by the engineering firms and all of the accountants to be anywhere from $15 to $20 million project. But that included a lot of things, not just the project itself, but engineering and those kinds of behind-the-scenes costs that one doesn't see. The objectives were reduce or eliminate the risk of refuse in the marine environment. That was the objective of stabilizing that particular cell. Minimize the disruption of the shoreline habitat. That was occurring, you saw by that picture, that was occurring by waste and other things getting in there, sediments and just unnatural stuff getting into the marine environment. Protect the water quality and the marine environments. I mean, I've stood out there on the bluff and seen all kinds of marine wildlife out in the strait. Prevent the majority of the existing unprotected bluff to continue to erode. Now that bluff, as you all know, erodes at a fairly regular rate, and it provides additional beach nourishment, they call it, material to the beach environment. So it's a natural process that bluff erodes, and it currently is anywhere from 3 to 5 feet a year. And so that provides shoreline sediments and habitat for all of the marine environment, stuff that I don't even know anything about. It's just, I'm a cowboy from Montana. That's stuff I don't even know about. So what did we do? Well, from the cell 304 cell, again on the right as you drove in, we moved all that material. It was in cell 304. We took it out of there and we put it in the cell 351, and then we covered it we relocated to 351. And then we installed gas collection systems. Landfills, as you know, make a lot of gas. Methane gas is a lot of gas underneath there. If we're going to cover this with an impermeable cover, we've got to collect that stuff, or it puffs up like a balloon, and all kinds of bad things happen. So we have to collect that leachate, or have to collect the methane gas. That's piped to a flare system, and you'll see it when you go out there. There's a flare that's constantly burning now. That's from the methane gas being produced by the waste, the refuse in the cell. We install leachate collection systems. Those leachate collection systems collect all the stuff that leaches out of refuse. As we all know, there's lots of stuff in landfills, and many of it, most of it's not good. And when you combine it into a soup, it's even not soup, it's even worse. So we collect those things. They will go through a water treatment system. The gas is burnt off. On a small landfill like this, the BTU value is, you know, it's minimal. But on some of the landfills and other projects that we do where we collect gas, we actually have a beneficial use for the methane. We covered the 351 cell with a low permeable soil that we made with by importing bentonite, screening the materials down to a fine, the existing gravels and dirts. We screened it down to a fine material, and then we mixed it with bentonite and placed it over top of the waste. So we got a clay layer on top of that, and that's a 2-foot thick layer of clay packed really tight. On top of that is a geosynthetic clay liner, or a geosynthetic liner, which is essentially plastic. It's a raincoat, and those raincoats in this part of the weather, that's the best design for this environment. We could have covered it in a lot of different environments. We cover that stuff with like in Wyoming. I've done a few corrective action management units in Wyoming. Basically landfills. It's on a property for an operating facility. We cover them with a thick layer of soils. It's a trans-evaporal cap, and what happens is that 9 inches of rainfall can't penetrate that cap before it evaporates, and that's a sufficient cover. We relocate things like that to areas where there's groundwater especially deep, and a whole lot of engineering stuff that I won't bore you with. But this application here was put a raincoat on it. Over top of that, we put some green astroturf, which is really kind of cool. It got kind of a look on it, but the slopes were so steep, there's no way soil would have stayed on it. So we had to cover it with something that was somewhat aesthetically appealing. So the engineers came up with that. One of the things that we had to do is there's some material in the 304 cell that is still there. There's some refuse that's still in the old landfill, and that's on the edge of the 304 cell. So we had to construct a mechanically reinforced earthen embankment to hold that stuff back, so that we didn't have, by the previous picture, this calving, the material falling into the strait. We did some enhancements on the existing seawall, and we regraded and restored cell 304. So this is what the landfill cell looks like as of about 2 weeks ago. This is the finished 351 cell, and this is some area that we're waiting for the seed to take place. But this is the cell. It is approximately just under 100 feet tall from the bottom here to the top. And this is the astroturf, and it's covered in sand with a 3/4 inch layer of sand over the top of the astroturf to hold it down. It's called sand ballast, and it holds it there. And we expect that there will probably be some vegetation that will take root in that over the years, certainly mosses and stuff like that, based on your environment here. And that's how it will appear. We're going to smooth that out. We actually have crews out there today doing some additional raking, and we'll have that thing. We're in punch list mode right now, so the work is done. The 304 cell, this is where all the waste came from, and this is from the straight side, and it gives you sort of an oblique perspective. But this material, this is the bluff that was eroding, and this material, there was approximately 400,000 cubic yards, 385,000 cubic yards of waste came out of this cell and went across the road into the 351 cell. And then we regraded all this. You can see we've got some astroturf here, we've got some seeded areas here. These slopes are all seeded, riprap and all that. And this is the mechanically reinforced earthen wall. That holds back, back behind it, that holds back the material that we couldn't remove, we didn't want to remove. And this is where that picture was taken over here. This is a slope that has been previously reclaimed to a previous, which was where that failure that in 2004 took place. This is 125 feet tall. It's the tallest structure in North America. It's not the largest in square footage, but in terms of overall height, it's best we can determine it's the largest in North America. That is a man standing there in the center of it.
Oh.
And it is It was a substantial, it took us 60 days to build that structure. And really what it is, it's a pretty simple. It's, landscapers do it all the time. This is sort of on more of an industrial scale. You put down a layer of compacted earth, you step it back a foot, put some geosynthetic material on there to hold it, and you step up another, back another foot, and just stair step it up. And so this is a pretty steep slope. It's a little steeper than 1-to-1. And we added, the engineers as we were starting didn't think they had enough protection, so we added this nose buttress out here. And I threatened to put some eyes there, so it kind of looks like a nose off of Canada, just a nose on Canada. So that's the project. That's what we ended up doing. It took us longer than we expected to do it. It cost us more money than we expected to do it. It cost us more money than we're going to get paid. And that's the way it goes sometimes. I work for a company that our parent company does over $1 billion worth of business a year. Our group does roughly $300 million worth of work a year. And we will move on after this project to the next one. But our goal here was to leave a high-quality product and high-quality project that will last in perpetuity for you all here. Profitability eroded a long time ago, and we didn't. We changed our objectives to end up with a highly. It's a real nice project. It's going to show very well. So over the local economic impacts, this is the money that I spent. My company spent in this area, in this local area. We spent over $6 million in labor. It was a prevailing wage job, and we spent over $6 million in just the labor for craft labor. Operators, laborers, teamsters, truck drivers. That money was in this local community. We hired everybody from local. There was a half a dozen of us that are management staff that are on salaried positions. But in my case, I didn't charge any of the project. So, my salary is an overhead cost with the company. We spent with the trucking companies here nearly $500,000 for materials, everything from Home Depot to sands and gravels to fabric, plastic liners. We spent nearly $747,000. We spent $1.5 million in subcontracts for just this area. Our total subcontractor bill was roughly $4 million that we had for subcontractors. But in this area, for your local economy, we paid subcontractors over $1.5 million. Our equipment rental, we rent a lot of heavy equipment, dozers, excavators, compactors, specialty equipment. Some of it we own. But in a place like this, depending upon where the equipment is, it is more cost effective for us to lease that equipment. And so we enter into long-term agreements with NC Machinery, PABA Machinery, other United Rentals that have local offices in Everett and Seattle, and so it stays here in this area. Fuel. Masco was our fuel supplier. Spent $780,000 in just diesel fuel for the run of the equipment. Per diems. These are big numbers. Per diems. That's what I pay the guys that I want to keep here on the project. I don't give per diem to everybody, but for key people, I pay them a per diem, and they spend that per diem in the hotels, in rent, or in meals. And subsistence is a separate category. So that subsistence is for guys like me that come into town. That's for guys that are here that we pay to be here all the time. Subsistence includes again, it's part of hotels, it's part of meals, it's part of other stuff. So all in all, these are the numbers. This is the local economic impact. The job cost us $20 million. Those are round numbers. Right now, we'll be finalizing the final quantities with the client. The city here in the next 30 days or so as we close everything down. Our final contract value it's 12.4 right now. It's probably going to bump up close to 13 million by the time it's all said and done. And that's the budget that the city had before taxes. Cost in excess of contract value. Magnus specific, went in the hole on this one, almost $8 million. And that's not anybody's, that's not any single person's fault. There were some issues that we had up front with the way we estimated the job, and there were some issues with the way we prosecuted the work as well. And so we'll take our licks and we'll go on to the next one and chalk it up for a learning experience. So the conclusion here is there's a lot of money being spent. There's a lot of money being spent by a contractor like me in this local community. So the message that I'd was hoping to share with you all is pay attention to the current events in your local community, because there was, as you saw, I spent directly here in this community over $12 million just directly right here over the course of the last year and a half, almost 2 years. We spent it at the Red Lion. We spent it at the restaurants. We spent it at Angeles Millworks. Getting our hair cut, ordering lunch. And think about what you can do. Before I go there, the dams on the Elwha River that were removed a couple of years ago. That was a big financial impact to your community as well. There are those kinds of projects that happen all over the place. There's one that's coming up, which is out on Nia Bay. There is a project that will be out probably in the next 2 years. It's a cleanup, another cleanup for a landfill that exists out there. And it's an opportunity for you all to figure out what you can offer a contractor, figure out what you can offer to a guy like me who is coming into your town. And I don't know anybody. I don't know. I've got a budget, and I've got an estimate that we went through, but I got to buy my fuel someplace. I've got to house my people someplace. I got to feed them. I got to, there's just all kinds of costs that go with it. So what can your business provide a contractor? You all have something with your businesses. There's always something that you can offer a contractor, and I'm going to spend that money. I'm going to spend it here. So kind of the first guy to the table wins. I can tell you right now that if the owner of Angeles Millworks had come to me and said, "Hey, I can provide you with all this kind of stuff. What do you got?" I looked at what we needed, and I probably would have cut my Home Depot bill in half. From the materials and stuff that I bought there. So don't wait for the contractor to call you. Find out who he is. Go see him. Go visit him. Pay him a visit. Sit down with him. And I can tell you that I've been doing this for a while, and around different towns and communities, from Mandan, North Dakota, to Port Angeles, to Nikiski, Alaska, one of the things that I don't understand is what's available to us locally. So if you can help out, you can help yourself and help a contractor by sitting down with him and talking to him. Solicit our business. We have the money, we're going to spend it. And then once you get it, service the business. I was telling Bill and Young, I was out there in the trailer one day, and I was just kind of looking around, and I didn't see anybody's business cards, any local business cards pinned to the wall. I didn't see any menus from any of the restaurants pinned to the wall. I was like, come on, I mean, it would have been. So I started bringing them up. I started bringing those things up to the trailer. But that's my message. And you guys have any questions? I'd be glad to answer. You guys will answer any questions, or the ones I can or can't.
You mentioned this wall will last in perpetuity. How long is that?
Where is that?
The wall. How long will the wall last?
That should be, that wall, the MRE wall, you talk about the MRE wall there?
Water.
It should last, well past my lifetime. It's probably, I don't honestly know the life on it, but I would suspect it has easily, with the seawall there protecting it, it's easily 100-year, it's a 100-year
But see,
life.
that's 100 years ago the whole thing was started.
Yeah.
And done wrong. In 100 years, will we be having the same conversation?
I hope not, with somebody else.
Oh, no.
I hope not.
Really, because walls tend to be eaten around from the edges, they come around and the sea comes around behind them, and all of a sudden you have a wall standing in the middle of the open water.
There'll be some maintenance on it, and the city is prepared, as part of their 404 Corps of Engineers permit. The city is prepared, and they have a budget for maintenance of that.
I'll ask you, was sea level rise considered in the construction and engineering?
I assume that it was, but I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure that there was, that was part of the engineering that was done before we picked it up. But I'm sure that there were those considerations. Sure.
You mentioned that there's a flare that is burning off the methane that's captured. Is there any possibility of capturing that methane because there's a lot of thermal units there that are just going up into the atmosphere?
Yeah,
Is there a possibility of recapture for use for public purposes?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that the city could certainly evaluate. I'm not sure what the BTU value of that is, but by the time by the time you piped it somewhere that it could be used, I'm not sure that there's that much value in it. There's so many impurities in it as well that there'd have to be some refinement.
So we looked into that, Steve, when I was on the council, and it just became financially not feasible to try and capture that. Just by the time, like you said, by the time you find it and everything else, it evaporated before you ever got to it. So we looked into it.
Yeah. On larger landfills, on larger collection systems like that, there tends to be, there is a break-even point, but it's with one flare, and there is 7 wells there that collect the methane, and there's just not enough. There's not enough produced off of that. There are some landfills that are, high producers, depending upon what was in there. This doesn't seem to be one of those. Yeah.
Can you comment on any environmental permitting and compliance issues as part of this project? I mean, was there a cost or a time required to comply with anything, or was it pretty much straightforward? You just got the contract with the city, you did the work, or do you have to go and get permission and file applications with different state and federal agencies?
Yeah, the city had all those. The city had all those permits in place, and had already done all of that and had worked out. They have their negotiations with Department of Ecology became a part of our contract, and so we only implemented what those agreements were in terms of, for example, there's a certain number of trees that are required to be planted on the bluff that is remaining, and that's part of their permit, and they just transferred that responsibility to us to plant those. So those were all done. We just worked in. And we had several Department of Ecology inspections over the course of the project, and there were no issues. They were happy with the progress.
How was the young fellow that got hurt doing?
He's doing much better. Good. I understand he is he's recovering nicely, and he is walking again, and he is doing much better. He's been out to visit other members of the crew, and he's been on the road to recovery and making good progress. Yes, he is.
Related question, could you give us an idea of the different permits that were needed from the federal and state agencies?
Again, those were all taken care of by the city of Los Angeles. But there was the Corps of Engineers 404 permit. There was a Coast Guard permit, and there was a Department of Ecology permit as well. Those are the sort of regulatory permits that were required. But we just became signatory to the existing permits that the city had. So as part of our contract, we just signed those. And we didn't have any obligation to procure those, but only follow the conditions of those permits.
When the big earthquake hits, what will happen to the wall?
I don't know, you're concerned about the wall, I don't know.
Or the whole area.
Bigger field to draw.
Yeah, there's a lot more out there on that bluff than the wall. There's gonna be a lot of bad things happening.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to skiing the mountain myself.
That's a great point, Bill. And
That's right, we got a new mountain range out there now.
You do, and there is, I've threatened to, when nobody's looking, I threatened to ski that. I've done that before on past projects, but I digress.
Is the project completely done now, or you?
It is, yeah.
So the equipment's out and?
Equipment is gone, we're buttoning up a few things, we're in the punch list mode right now, which is just cleaning up some of the, sweeping up the crumbs in the corners and kind of cleaning things up and finalizing. That did you have something?
No, I didn't.
Mark? Yeah.
Little perspective, I moved here in 1946. At that time, if you had any landfill material, you backed up to the bluff, tipped it over the side. There was no environmental concern. Car bodies and everything else went over there. And one of the favorite sports in the evening was go out there with a flashlight and .22 rifle and shoot rats.
Come along.
Those were the days, huh?
How about, I'm curious about the long-term use of that particular chunk of land. It sounds like the way that you did this project, it's pretty well contained. But I know there's other areas in the country that have used these landfills. Virginia Beach, that I lived at, has Mount Trashmore, where it's a huge recreational facility. Actually, is that a possibility with this site?
Probably not. It's flat on top. We've talked about putting a soccer field up on top, but getting up to it's a pain in the ass. There's no seating. It's great asphalt, it's a great surface, a sand surface. It would make a great soccer field, but in this particular application, there really isn't much other beneficial use. But I've put wind farms on stuff like this in the past. Most of the times, projects like this end up with governing covenants that don't allow for a certain amount of improvements. If you remember back in the 70s, Times Beach, there was homes built on top of disposal sites, and it turned out to be really bad. So that all comes forward to today, where there are restricted covenants on most of these kinds of projects. I have a project that I completed in 2009 in Casper, Wyoming. What was an old refinery, and we took that property and we changed it from a refinery to a business park and a golf course. And some of the features within the golf course are actually remediation features. Some of the water features are water treatment for the groundwater that's contaminated with crude oil from 100 years of leaking pipes underneath the ground. And we took the concrete that held all of the buildings and structures, we crushed it up and we made roads out of it, trails, and we put there was contamination seeping into the North Platte River, and we built a kayak course there, a mile-long kayak course with 5 different structures that is a draw now to central Wyoming, where people come to play on a place like that. There are opportunities for those kinds of projects, for those beneficial reuses. It's a business park, it's a golf course, it's a kayak course, and there are opportunities out there for that kind of stuff. This doesn't really apply, and particularly the way the bluff, the 304, the old cell was designed, or with the repairs. This is designed, in this part right here, this is designed for the continued erosion of that bank. This will march back over time as it erodes naturally. It'll march back over time as it erodes naturally. This is unprotected. The seawall ends here. The riprap for the seawall is on this side. The seawall runs here to Dry Creek, and this is the MRE wall. This is all set up and engineered to erode naturally and provide natural erosion back into the strait. that's sort of.
Okay, one last question, I think. George?
How many pounds of asbestos were discovered when they were removed, and if so, how were they remediated?
A subcontractor was brought in to deal with that. We hired a subcontractor to deal with the asbestos. There was approximately 15,000 pounds of asbestos that was discovered, and it was bagged and disposed of in accordance with current regulations.
Okay, one more, Don?
No, I was just gonna make a motion to extend the meeting, but if that's the last question, we're good.
I think we're all right. Thank you very much.
All right, so this presentation is about the Port Angeles Landfill Stabilization Project. The project was put out on the street in 2013 and bid and awarded. There were several. It was a competitive bid contract, and it was bid and won by my company, Magnus Corporation. Why does this say Great Lakes on there? In November of 2014, we were purchased by Great Lakes Dock and Dredge, a company out of Chicago, Illinois, just outside Oak Brook, Illinois, actually. And our name changed to Great Lakes Environmental first of this last month. So we were known as Magnus Pacific when we purchased when we won the project, and when we were purchased by Great Lakes Environmental. So as we go through here, you'll see slides that are Great Lakes, but just as recently as the last 3 weeks, we've always been known as Magnus Pacific, but now we're known as Great Lakes Environmental. So a little bit of history about myself. As John said, I live in Big Fork, Montana. I've been doing environmental remediation projects across the United States for almost 30 years, and I've had the opportunity to visit some really wonderful places. But I have to be honest with you, the first time somebody said, we need your help in Port Angeles, Washington, I said, what the heck is that? And have never been here before, never been on the Olympic Peninsula. And so my first, let me open up things here with, where's my mouse? I guess the other way. Let me open up things here with the picture that you saw up there a moment ago is titled, it's a C.M. Russell painting, and the title of that is In Without Knocking. That's a bunch of cowboys that are in town for a celebration, and oftentimes that's the way I feel coming into the community. Sometimes we come in without knocking, and it's sometimes it's disruptive to the communities and the areas that we work in. But let me take a second here and get this on the right.
Big Fork, Montana's over there. Mark WILTSE, and it's all yours. He's going to tell us about the impact of local businesses from the what was a $14 million project, I believe, became a $20 million project in fixing the city landfill.
Yeah, only on the negative bean side.
Can everybody hear him okay? Do you need
Good morning, everybody.
a faulty mic here?
My name is Mark WILTSE, and I apologize for my voice. I have been struggling with a virus for the last couple of weeks, and I'm just getting over it. So I think I've got the voice to continue through this. But if anybody can't hear me, just sing out. I think I can project the screen, and I can do that this way.
Let's go back to the district. Should be so easy. Out of the computer and hooks up and gets a virus. It goes crazy.
done this while you guys are talking.